We have the highly requested 5.7 HEMI in the Ram 1500, and we're gonna see how it tows my 8,000 pound trailer up and down the highway. Welcome back to the channel, guys. We are blessed with this 5.7 HEMI in this Ram 1500, and I miss my old 5.7. It was a bit of a thrill driving this thing around town today, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm really excited to see how this thing pulls, my 8,000 pound trailer, as well as comparing this 5.7 HEMI to the 5.3 liter from GM, as well as the 5 liter Coyote from Ford in terms of towing ability. As always with any 1500, we have our 8,000 pound trailer set up here. Exact same trailer, same load location, giving us the same tongue weight. We also tow the same 200 kilometer loop. This 5.7 HEMI is packing 395 horsepower as well as 410 pound-feet of torque, which definitely comes in on the higher scale of things when it comes to the 1500 segment. Our competitors, the 5.3 liter from GM, coming in at a little bit lower, 355 horsepower as well as 383 pound-feet of torque. Finally, the Ford 5 liter Coyote comes in at a slightly higher power output of 400 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. So it'll be really interesting between the Ford and this engine just to see exactly how they compare when towing, because they are so close in terms of power figures. The max towing ability of the 5.7 HEMI in the Ram 1500s is 12,750 pounds. Now, the truck we have behind us here comes in at a max towing figure of only 8,100 pounds. So a pretty dramatic drop in towing figure between trucks here, and that has mainly to do with one thing, the gearing. This truck comes with 321 gears, and that is why we see that dramatic drop in towing. Now, thankfully for our comparison, the other trucks also came with very low gearing. The Chevy came with 323 gears, and then the Ford came with 331 gears. So the gearing is all within the same ballpark, but it is very interesting to see how much towing ability is lost simply by having different gear sets in your truck. Well, I think it's about time we get this 5.7 HEMI on the road with that load behind it, really see what it is all about. So just before we jump on the highway here, I love to see and feel, this thing feels like it just has some good torque, some good power, ready to go in her. Definitely feels like there's a load behind us. I don't think we're gonna be anywhere near as quick as that 3.5 liter EcoBoost, but I think this run should be pretty successful with this, this big 5.7 HEMI. So we'll have to see about that. But first off, when we get on the highway, we'll do our acceleration test. 60 kilometers an hour to 110 kilometers an hour. So we'll come around the corner here, 60 kilometers an hour to the floor. Oh yeah. Woo! 110. Okay. That felt pretty quick, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how quick. I know the 5 liter did it in 9 seconds. I'll have to review the footage, but that felt pretty quick, pretty good. Good start for the 5.7 HEMI. We'll set her to 110. All right, 110 set. Oh yeah, dropped a gear, let's go. 110 right there. I'm excited for the run. I'm not gonna lie. Feels good being behind the HEMI once again. Sounds fantastic. Hopefully that'll come through in the video here, but I just want to talk a little bit about driveline with this truck and obviously against the trucks we're kind of comparing here. So this truck has an 8-speed transmission. As you can see, we are in 8th gear there. I have a sneaky suspicion because, well, I used to own one of these trucks. With the 321 gears, I think we're gonna stay in a lot in 6th gear. 6th gear is 1-to-1 on the ZF 8-speed. And like I said, with the 321 gears, which I had in my old truck, that's kind of where it liked to sit when it was towing. So I expect that, and that's about 3,000 RPM. So we'll keep an eye on that. Where I think the other two trucks will have an advantage in terms of drive line is they both come with 10-speed. Both the Ford and the GM come with a 10-speed transmission. We only have 8 gears, so it'll be interesting to see how this truck utilizes the 8 gears it has, or if those 10 speeds really are going to be truly a big advantage when it comes to this towing test here. And well, as you can see, just going up this little hill here, we've already dropped down to 5th gear and just under 4,000 RPM. So this Hemi's getting a full workout right from the get-go. This Ram 1500 is going to come with just over 1,600 pounds of payload ability. And when we have 840 pounds of tongue weight, this truck squatted 2.5 inches, which is the most out of our 3 truck comparison. And just like when we towed with the 3.6 liter Pentastar, these Ram 1500s come with coil suspension in the back. It's great for ride comfort, but when you're putting a load on them or putting a trailer behind these trucks, they tend to squat and they tend to sag a little bit more than your traditional leaf springs, which the Ford and GM still implement on their 1500 trucks. One of the first things that I'm liking and noticing is that this truck loves to keep us right at 110, right where we want to be. If we drop to like 109, and I'll show you in a second here, this truck downshifts, and I really, really like that. I know a couple weeks ago I towed with the 6.6 liter big GM V8 in the Chevy 2500, and it would like drop to like 100 kilometers an hour before it downshifts. So I really, really like that this engine, this truck is very responsive when it comes to keeping speed, especially when towing. This engine, this Hemi, it's just such a smooth power delivery. You know, we're cruising at under 2,000 RPM right now. It's just, there's plenty of torque when you need it. It sounds great. The truck is comfortable. I really, really like this engine so far. Now, also before we get too far, our transmission temp is sitting at 192, oil temp at 230 there. So we'll keep an eye on those as well throughout the test. That does seem a little bit high just starting out, but perhaps this is where this truck's gonna wanna sit. We'll keep an eye on those and I'll keep you updated in terms of all our temps. Now, quickly just looking at our fuel economy here, we are at 20.2 liters per 100 kilometers, which is actually surprisingly more efficient than the 5.3 liter as well as the 5 liter Coyote engine on this part of our towing loop, which is surprising. I thought for sure the 5 liter would be more efficient. We're obviously not done yet. Lots of road to go. Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it is something you may expect because, well, the 5 liter Coyote engine, it gets a lot of its torque in the upper RPM band, which means it's gonna have to rev a lot more. This 5.7 Hemi gets a lot of its torque from like 1,500 RPM and above. So it probably is not gonna have to rev as much or work as hard to generate that torque to keep the wheels moving at 110 kilometers an hour. So, I mean, in theory, now that I'm thinking about it, it actually does make a little bit of sense that this 5.7, despite being a bigger displacement engine, may not have to work as hard to get that torque needed to keep the wheels moving. So we'll keep an eye on the fuel economy, obviously. Now, speaking of displacement and power output, I want to talk a little bit more about that for each engine. They say there's no replacement for displacement, and I think that is the biggest advantage this 5.7 Hemi has over the 5.3 liter and the 5 liter Coyote engine. First of all, the 5.3 liter, I think it's just a little bit underpowered right from the get-go. Looking at the 5 liter, which power numbers are almost identical to this 5.7 liter Hemi, the power output and the power availability is just completely different on both of these engines. And what Ford did in order for that 5 liter to compete with bigger displacement engines is they added a lot of top end power to that 5 liter so it could make those bigger power numbers by having a higher redline. So that engine is a dual overhead cam setup, and that allows that engine to rev much higher, all the way up to about 7,000 RPM. And when you get up into that top end power, that's where that engine makes a lot of its torque and horsepower. And so what that does is on the lower end of things, especially when you're towing, that first, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 RPMs, you're not necessarily getting a lot of that responsiveness, that torque generation down low, where with this engine here having that real displacement, 5.7 liters of it, you're gonna get a lot more responsiveness out of this engine. The torque is gonna be there. When you put your foot down, it's gonna just push that trailer forward, something the 5 liter lacks slightly. The 5 liter, when you get up in that top end power, 4,000, 5,000 RPM, it starts to pull away. There's plenty of power there. It's just the responsiveness of having that extra displacement gives you that power right away, and that's something I really like about this 5.7 Hemi. So it's time for some engine braking. The 5 liter let us go to 116 kilometers an hour. The Chevy, we went up to 114. So let's see how far this truck is gonna let us drift. We're at 110 right now, pinned. Let's see how this engine does, if it can keep us closer to 110 than the other ones. 112, 113, downshift. Another downshift, 113 still, 112. Not too bad, 111. 110. Wow, I think this is the only truck that actually brought us back to 110. Well, 111 now, 110, there it is. She's holding us really, really good. Beautiful day out there, folks. As you can see, 110, 111. The fall is coming in. Beautiful colors in the trees. Yeah, that's by far the best engine braking performance out of the 3 trucks. Yeah, that 5.7 Hemi just killed it. Wow. Here's what I mean, how this truck will keep us at 110 extremely well. So we're at 109. It won't let us drop to 108, I guarantee it. Boom, downshift. Boom, another downshift. 110. That is the responsiveness I like. When I got my cruise control pinned at 110, I want this thing to keep us at 110 as best as possible. And the responsiveness of this cruise control in this truck is fantastic. I love it. And we're putting the Hemi back to work, going up the hill. Transmission temp is climbing 199 and 242 degrees Fahrenheit oil temperatures. Yeah, that's running a little hot. You'd like to see that trans temp closer to like 190. You don't really want that creeping up above 200 degrees Fahrenheit for too long. Oil temp 240. She's running a little bit on the hotter side of things. No panic yet, but on the backstretch, like I said, we have some bigger hills, so we'll keep a close eye on those temps. Make sure we're not getting too hot. Well, we made it to our halfway point in one piece. I'm having a good time towing with it, but as always, the backstretch, we got some bigger hills, and I think that's where we're gonna see these 321 gears really struggle. We're probably gonna have to see that Hemi rev up a lot. Only time will tell, and we'll see how it does on this backstretch in comparison to those other 2 trucks. So we're getting on the highway. We'll do our second acceleration test. Once again, 60 to 110, 60 to the floor. Oh yeah, nothing to it. Nothing to it. I know, like, the 5 liter, the Coyote 5 liter is supposed to have all this top end power, and it does, but the Hemi just keeps on coming. The power delivery is just so smooth, and like it just keeps on coming as you get higher into the RPM bands, which is just impressive. First hill of the bigger hills. Just under 4,000 RPM. Back to 110. Yeah, there's not too much drama. I mean, I feel like we could drop another gear if needed. Maybe. Now watch how we maintain speed going up this hill. 109, downshift, still at 109. Another downshift, still at 109. So this engine, this truck does a really, really good job of keeping our speed at 110, which is exactly where we want it. And I really, really like that. It makes driving this thing just seamless because you're constantly at that speed you want, and the engine just does its job and keeps you there. It's time for the biggest hill on the towing loop. So we're going down into the valley here. Once again, we'll see this engine braking come into effect. 111, no downshift yet, but she is holding us really nicely. Another downshift right there. Yeah, this truck it holds its speed and keeps us at speed very, very well. Let's see what happens on the way up here. This is the big test for the big Hemi. Let's see what she's got. Downshift, 3,000 RPM, 109 kilometers an hour. There is another downshift, 110. So I was curious if we were going to be able to hold 6th gear 1-to-1, but we're not. We're in 5th gear. The 5-liter was able to hold a gear at 3,100 RPM. We are currently at like 3,800 RPM, very similar to the 5.3. Let's see what our trans temp is at. Oh yeah, she's getting a little toasty. 199 degrees on our trans temp, 240, sorry, on our oil temperature. So she's getting pretty warm, but nothing too crazy. I think if that grade kept on going, we should have been okay. But yeah, I think that is kind of where we highlighted the 321 gears there. You know, we were not able to maintain a 1-to-1 drive or maintain 6th gear. We had to go to an underdrive gear. I think if we had the 392 gears in this truck, we could have not had to downshift there. Passing the old big rig here. Out of the way, bud. 5.7 Hemi, you're coming through. The 5.7 Hemi just sounds really good. It just sounds nice and like throaty, but like meaty too, if that makes any sense. You know, like I put my foot down, like, oh yeah. Like just sounds good. Let's do that again. Let's see this. All right, here we go. Like, look at her just pull. Just pulling her. Not bad, not bad. That might, you know, hit the fuel economy pretty good there, but it's a real world test. It happens. Sometimes the foot just comes down. So we are almost done our 200 kilometer towing loop here, and well, just some quick takeaways before I get into my conclusion. I just really like the way this Hemi pulls. I know the gearing is not really advantageous, and it did suffer on some hills. We had to drop to some higher RPMs, but you can feel there's just some really good pull out of this engine, and it doesn't really matter what RPM range you're in. The torque band is so broad, the power is always there, and especially with that nice big displacement, it sounds awesome. The way this 8-speed transmission shifts is just so nice and smooth. It was honestly a really nice joy towing with this truck. So we are back at the shop. Our final fuel economy for the run, 19.2 liters per 100 kilometers. Now, as I somewhat predicted, I think because of that big displacement, that low end torque, the engine just didn't have to work as hard as the 5-liter and the 5.3, which is why it was most likely more fuel efficient than both of those engines.
Well, I forgot a conclusion, and well, here we are with the empty trailer. Looking over the footage, editing the footage, it's pretty clear that the 5-liter was generally the better performer on my towing loop versus the 5.7 Hemi as well as the 5.3. Now the 5.3 in my opinion is just underpowered to begin with, and the numbers don't lie. It was just not as good of a performer in comparison to the other two engines. Now I had a better towing experience with the 5.7 Hemi, and there's probably a little bit of bias there because, well, I do like the truck and the engine, but there were some really good highlights with the 5.7. You guys saw the engine braking. It was phenomenal. In terms of like keeping our speed, the cruise control responsiveness on the 5.7 Hemi and the Ram 1500 was amazing. I really, really like that. And I talked about in the video again, just the power delivery out of that engine is just so smooth, and that torque band is so nice and broad. It doesn't really matter what RPMs you're in, you're gonna have that really nice punch out of that 5.7 Hemi. And then finally, in terms of fuel economy, it was actually a more fuel efficient engine than both of those smaller displacement V8s, which I think might shock some people. So overall, I really like the 5.7 Hemi. If you're looking for a pure performance, the 5-liter is definitely the way to go in terms of V8s. Anyways, guys, if you did like the video, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. We got lots of cool truck content coming down the road. But enough of me. We'll see you in the next freaking video.